Alright, good morning, friends out in YouTube land. Wow, this is a beautiful day. Just the mist out on the Route 6 between the Palisades and over the it's Niflas Abare. It's the wonders of the Creator and the wonders of creation. It's just mamish. It's mamish, such a beautiful. I should turn this around. You should see, but it's you can't really capture this on video. Beauty. And, maybe a lot of people say, "Oh, the fog, it's ugly," but it's quite inspiring. I'll tell you, I'm pretty tired. I put in a big work week and just trying to keep my head above water. Almost cost me more money to get to work than it's worth it to work, but I don't want to be lazy. I want to keep working. Yesterday, I started to talk about the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which I guess in the English calendar was yesterday. I don't know if they make a big deal about it on the Hebrew calendar, the Tzionim, the way they make He'ir, but then this weird thing now about He'ir is it doesn't matter anymore. We'll make it Vav because I understand they want to eliminate Chilul Shabbos. Is a nice thing, but better do away with the whole thing altogether. I don't know, but it is what it is. It made me, when they mamish make a yontiv out of it, we're saying Hallel and everything. We don't change Hanukkah just because it's on Shabbos. I guess Purim, in Yerushalayim, they don't lay in the Megillah on Shabbos. But it doesn't change the etzem of Purim, meaning we still do the Kriyas Torah of Purim. So it would seem, maybe based on that the Hallel, although they say the Megillah is the Hallel, I don't know. We still say Al Anisim on Shabbos in Shushan Purim in Yerushalayim, or wherever they celebrate Shushan Purim if it falls on Shabbos. It's just that the Megillah is read. But Davka, when they were Masakin the Megillah, we have that, Megillah Nikres, that it doesn't have to be the same day. Whatever it is, I don't really care, because first of all, there's no Sanhedrin meaning. The other strange thing is how they're so hateful of anyone who wasn't Makabel this. They're like, well, how could it be someone could, not only they don't say Hallel on He'ir, but they even go and say Tachanun. What's wrong with them? And the thing is, we don't have a Sanhedrin. Do you keep all of the Takonis that the Sanhedrin made? That's what Klal Yisrael is mechuyev to keep. It's only whatever Takonis that the Sanhedrin made. And to make a new yontif like this and to say it, everybody has to say it, and everyone has to keep. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's no such idea in halacha that it could be binding on everybody like that. It's each community has their own thing, and the chutzpah, the Rabbanu, basically, when they say that, it's like they're saying that they're the Sanhedrin, which they aren't, and it's a chutzpah for them to even suggest that they're anything like a Sanhedrin. Let's put this aside for now. I want to talk about yesterday. I kind of briefly touched on the statement of the Ohr Somayach concerning the Balfour Declaration, and I was discussing yesterday, explaining a little bit what these oaths were, but I didn't really explain. I was more discussing the idea behind it, and also the brilliance of Chazal, whether these oaths were, as Samarov said, they were coming from Sinai, which I do believe, but in some form, in some sense, even if it means the potential to the actual, it doesn't have to mean in a very plain, literal way. But the Ariya Kodesh says that, common sense is on a higher level than Nevuah. That's why you say Chacham Adif Minavi. that the sage, a wise person, is stronger than the prophet. And essentially, like I've said before, based on this, many of the essential ideals of the Enlightenment, of the Gentile Enlightenment, not the Jewish Enlightenment is not really an Enlightenment, but the Gentile Enlightenment, which brought about this great country, the United States of America, essentially actualizes the fundamental ideas of Torah that were given at Mount Sinai much more than the state of Israel does, the modern state of Israel does. I'm not saying the modern state of Israel totally lacks any of that, but most of what its actualization of what was truly given at Sinai, in a certain sense, they got more from America than they got from having signed a movement that was divorced and devoid of Torah. For the most part, because of the ethnocentricity of Zionism. Which I feel, abrupts the essential message of our sages. When our sages say, Mamzer Talmud Chochem Kodim L'Koyin Godel Am Haaretz. It's a Mishnah. It's the end of Horius. What that teaches us is that pedigree means nothing. Who you are, who you make of yourself, means something. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll have Parshas Toldos, which has the words in Rashi, that we see that Yitzchak and Rivka both davened, Isaac and Rebecca both went to pray. Rashi says they went up on the roof to pray. They each stood in a different corner to pray that they should have children. And it says that Isaac was answered before Rebecca. Why? Rashi says because Ein Doime Tfilas Tzadik ben Tzadik Tfilas Tzadik ben Roshi. That the prayers of a tzaddik whose father was a tzaddik are greater than the prayers of the tzaddik whose father was a Roshi. And so what is the meaning of that? Does that mean that Yichus makes you holier or better? So Biala Rebbe Shlita, I heard from him, it's interesting, was that weekend that I discovered online with Yichus from my Zayda. The fact of the matter is, even I look at my own father, he's much more moral and honest than I am, as my Zayda was as well. So I just because I do these external expressions of religion doesn't make me a more moral or better or honest person. And these things are supposed to help us become more honest and moral. But they don't always work, and a lot of it is, Shibud Goliath. But let's put this aside for now. point so the Biala Rebbe said that the reason why the Tzaddik ben Tzaddik is going to be answered before the Tzaddik ben Rosha is the Tzaddik ben Tzaddik is on a lower level than his father. And so therefore, I remember, seeing the Vishnitzer Rebbe. I think it was before he was Rebbe. I'm not sure, but the current Vishnitzer Rebbe from one of the brothers from Bnei Brak, I don't remember which one, saying something like, all his blessings were b'schisa voice ha'kedoshim, and the merit of my holy ancestors. What is that? Is that ancestor worship? What exactly is this? And the point is, the ideology and the mentality behind this is as follows: the Tzaddik ben Tzaddik is humbled because he knows he's not as good as his father was. Whereas the Tzaddik ben Rosha is arrogant to a certain extent because he sees he's better than his father. And so that's why Isaac was answered before Rebekah, because Rebekah, even though she was a holy, saintly woman, and she probably wasn't arrogant at all by our standards, but to a certain small extent, she had a little bit more arrogance than Isaac did, because Isaac, he looked up to his father Abraham, and he's like, I know I'm nothing like my father, I'm nowhere near as great as my father. So that humbled him, and humility is the key to answering of prayer. But we see in the current Jewish world just the opposite. Particularly in the secular Jewish world, they feel that their ethnicity somehow makes them special, and it doesn't. I saw a horrible, disgusting, the antithesis of what the Torah teaches. And I'm not saying, I know people are going to say, well, this person converted, reformed. That's not what I'm talking about. There was an article discussing Marilyn Monroe, how she converted to Judaism, discussing how she was Jewish, discussing how Elizabeth Taylor was Jewish, she converted to Judaism, how Elvis Presley by halakha was born Jewish, his mother's mother was Jewish. These are three of the most iconic celebrities of the 20th century, and they were Jewish. Now, I'm not talking, it wasn't an Orthodox person saying, oh, this person, Marilyn Monroe converted reformed, so she's not really Jewish. That wasn't the case. What we had was, and I don't know what kind of conversion she had. It's really none of my business. It doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But what I basically wanted to say was so in this there was a comment on this article where a poor person who wasn't from said, no, Marilyn Monroe isn't Jewish because she didn't grow up with grandparents who spoke Yiddish and eating bagels and things like that. Like, what? Like, check your privilege. I don't usually say that, but like, what on earth are you talking about? Judaism is a religion. It's not a race. It's not an ethnicity. There are many different Jewish ethnicities, but to be a Jew is not an ethnicity. And it's whatever. It was quite upsetting to read that, and it's against the Torah. The Torah says "V'ahavtam es hager," you're supposed to love the convert. We translated "love the stranger," but it really means, and this whole neo-ger movement, ger toshav movement, is ridiculous. When we talk it, Bisman is there, when we use the term ger, we mean a ger tzedek. We don't mean a ger toshav. Why are you limiting people and holding them back from? They want to be a ger tzedek, and it causes confusion, and then there's this whole fight over the semantics of a ger or a Noahide. What David Katz calls a ger is the same thing what everybody else calls a Noahide. It's just using a different word to describe the same thing. And it's kind of weird and cultish the way he does it. But anyway, I want to get the point I want to say is that this is one of the big sins of Zionism is this this sense of Jewish pride that's not linked to being a servant of God, and that's ethnocentric. Oh, look, we're such smart people. We produced Einstein and Sigmund Freud and like Sigmund Freud was a person who brought tremendous destruction to this world, as did Marx. And where did Marx come out of? Marx came out of because his father converted to Christianity not out of faith, but for financial gain. And that type of abuse of religion was what caused so much destruction in this world. Because we see, if you hate Nazis, you got to hate communists much more, because Nazis killed 12, 18 million people, whatever, and the communists killed like 100 million people between, probably 50 million in the Soviet Union and 50 million in China, and how many other millions in Cambodia and Vietnam and North Korea and so forth. It's a force for destruction and death and murder that puts the Nazis to shame. And yet somehow the left makes it like, the communists are not as bad as the Nazis. But I don't understand it. And really, Nazism is a form of socialism. It's National Socialism, so it also comes from Marxist roots. So Marx is responsible for Hitler as well. And so all that blood is on his hands, and it's just I don't know. So anyway, we want to get back to this about the Balfour Declaration, which some tzaddikim called the Balfour Declaration, a reference to a rather disgusting form of idolatry from biblical times. But there was some positive words from tzaddikim, Gedolei Yisrael, about the Balfour Declaration. That was particularly, like we mentioned, that there was a statement from the Ohr Somayach, and what he said was that the fear of the oaths is past. So what what do we? So we discussed the oaths. So basically, we discussed this yesterday. What the oaths basically mean is that we're not going to push any eschatology. And like I said yesterday, that's going back to what I was talking about before. That's a very healthy attitude of our sages, because we see in other religions and in the Jewish world how eschatology, people trying to actualize eschatology, has been a majorly destructive force in the world of religion and in society in general. And we talk about the Iranians who they want to bring the Mahdi, and they feel that by creating some kind of apocalyptic war and everything is going to bring the end times. And similar, and we spoke about how in times of Shabtai Tzvi, people's lives were ruined because they got up and went to Ottoman Palestine, expecting Shabtai Tzvi to be Yimach Shemoy v'Zichroi to be Mashiach, and then how many people that not only they lost their faith, but in a simple way they lost their livelihoods, they lost their homes, they lost their businesses, they lost their families sometimes because of this eschatological preoccupation. And so the sages were very wise to play down eschatology to a certain extent, particularly in practical. Eschatology is always seen as when Mashiach get kimmen, when that's of Mashiach's time. That was, there's a reason why there's a saying like that in the Jewish culture. It's because it's something that's put off and not focused on right now. Let's focus in the here and now. Let's live here and now. When Mashiach comes, Mashiach comes. But one rabbi who does a lot of anti-missionary work, he points out how Christianity makes the whole religion about that you have to have faith in the Messiah. And the question is, in Judaism, we have 613 commandments, and not one of them is thou shalt believe in the Messiah when he comes. Why? Because when the Messiah comes, it's like making a commandment. Thou shalt believe that the sky is blue. Thou shalt believe that water is wet. When the Messiah comes, no one's going to question it. It's going to be so obvious. That's just how it is. So when we go back to to all these things, everything. So So that's another problem with Zionism, is that, particularly certain aspects of religious Zionism, there are level-headed, normal religious Zionists. To a certain extent, J.B. Soloveitchik was from that world of normal, practical, level-headed religious Zionists. Did someone else say Rabbi Melchior, I think his name? I don't remember. Also very down-to-earth, normal person, not an extremist. On the other hand, I can understand if you really believe in this stuff, where the extremism would come from. But the fact that even Meir Kahane was not as extreme as his followers, and this whole thing we call the Jerusalem syndrome, a form of mental illness where people imagine that they're a messiah or something like that, and it's really exacerbated by Zionism. But let's put this aside. I wanted to talk a little bit different thing. Is that the Ohr Somayach, Mayor Simcha of Dvinsk, he said that when the Balfour Declaration came about, it was 100 years ago, yesterday, he said that the fear of the oaths is past. And so there are two different ways of how people have interpreted what Rabbi Simcha said about the fear of the oaths. And it's ironic that I've seen this. There was more or less a Haredi or a Haredi-esque book, which I'll question its Haredi standards or credit, street cred. In the way of no true Scotsman type of argument. And the ironic thing is, what I think is more likely, to be honest, came from a religious Zionist, modern Orthodox source, who was just being intellectually honest and not trying to read something in that really wasn't there. So I remember, Rabbi Leff, who I have a lot of respect for, and I always enjoyed his talks in yeshiva. He would come to my yeshiva, Ohr Somayach, once a week, and it was a nice program which he would do every week, or maybe it was every 2 weeks. We always enjoyed him, and I been in touch with him afterwards. I saw him here and there after that. And so Rabbi Leff is quoted, he writes in a book, to the Palace of the King, which is supposed to be like a non-Zionist approach to Eretz Israel. But there, he quotes this from the Ohr Somayach kind of in support of Zionism. And there are those strands, particularly in, I would say, the Anglo-Haredi community in Israel. Things like, like the Bostoner Rebbe, that type of approach, where they are essentially religious Zionists, just they don't say it. The main difference is that they dress Haredi, they follow maybe more Haredi Frumkeit standards with certain things, standard American Haredi Frumkeit standards, Flatbush or wherever, Five Towns, they wear black hats. They don't say Hallel on Hayir, but they're still really, in their hearts, they're really Zionists. But it was just, I don't care. I'm just trying to be intellectually honest, and that's kind of where Rabbi Leff falls in. And I love him. I don't have a problem with just trying to be intellectually honest of who he is. He doesn't really, and that's kind of really, even though he was a real old Yerushalmi, that's kind of how Rav Elyashiv, as a friend of Rav, was. I would even venture to say that Rav Elyashiv was a little bit more Zionist than people understand, and it's certainly in a certain sense, Rav Elyashiv was more Zionist than Rav Steinemann. And Rav Steinemann is like the favorite whipping boy of the extremist anti-Zionist Haredim, because of his statements concerning, entering the army and things like that. But someone told me, they asked Rav Elyashiv about saying Hallel on Hayir, and Rav Elyashiv said, if you're a Zionist, you're saying; if you're not, you're not. Meaning he understood that it's already to a point historically where some people have this minhag and some people don't, and that's. And I don't think Rav Steinman holds like that. I don't know him that way. I only saw him once from very far away, and he came to speak in Borough Park. And I have respect for him. I don't, it's just, and I'm very upset at Military Karta for their insults against this, a Choshev Yid, the Rosh Yeshiva, who's totally dedicated to Torah, and who, and I felt it was always a chutzpah that they would come and protest. He's not coming to make a political rally. He's coming to give chizuk to Torah. So why, with tremendous mesirus nefesh? So why? Where is this coming from? These insults and these protests? It's just a chutzpah, and it's stupid. When the Torah Karta, B'nai Yoel, and they do this nonsense. It's not Toradic. It's not Yiddish. I'm not saying that they're, they don't do other good things. They do a lot of good things, and a lot of their points are valid and true. But on other ways, this particular thing, I call them out on and say and I'm moicha. And then they have the right to listen to me or not. They don't. They have their own rabbanim, and they're supposed to listen to their own rabbanim. So it's not. I don't know what. The Shamar Sharuf was just nifter. I don't know what did he hold about this, about protesting against. They're having fewer and fewer real major people to look up to. They don't have any more of the Shamar Sharuf. They don't have who do they? They don't have any more of Avram Leitner. They don't have who do they have? I don't know, but they make Moshe Berbeck to be a Episod Rebbe and Tzaddik, but I think they all agree he's not a Gadol B'Yisrael. He doesn't have Gadlus as a Talmud Chacham, and I don't think he has Gadlus as a Tzaddik either. But he's an interesting person, and he's I don't hate him, but I've met him once, but he's I've heard too many bad things from reliable Erlicha people who I respect and who I was closer with, at least historically, and that's kind of the main issue I have with him. Certain accusations I've heard about him upset me more. How he framed innocent people with political purposes, whatever. Or his Hasidim did, or whatever, But the same thing. Not every rebel is Tzaddik Hador either. I enjoy going to rebbes, but I've reached a certain point in my life where I realize, the average Hasidic rebbe is not really any different than your average, YU rabbi. They're nice, fine, Erlicha people, but that's. There's just like how in YU, you have certain people who are have a certain godless, even if I disagree with the politics of Herschel Schechter, he has a certain godless to him, that we all respect, and certainly Mordechai Willig also a very special Rav, and beloved person, and a sweet person, just a wonderful person, So, that's just the truth of the matter. And it's so too, but the same thing with a little Hasidic Rebbe. They put on this charismatic, act and everything, and it's good. It's they're keeping the culture alive. I respect it, but it's not everybody is a Sklener Rebbe, not everybody is the Kalaver Rebbe. That's my Rebbe. Not everyone's with Matal Vishnitzer, and even the fact that Baron Teitelbaum, I love very much. My daughter goes to his school, and he's a Gadol B'Yisrael and a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He's and I respect him for that. Even people don't like his personality, and I can understand that, whatever. But I like him, and I like Reb Zalman Leib too, which is he's not a big of a Talmud Chacham. He's a fine Ehrlicher person. Sometimes whatever, but both of them, they make mistakes here and there, whatever. That's what I love about Satmar, is that people can critique the Rebbes, and it's not heresy. The way, like in Lubavitch, if you say some critique of something Lubavitch Rebbe did, it's like you're not Bikaris, It's the same problem in the square. Maybe not as much in Karl and Stalin, although Karl and Stalin also has this ideology that's very that's very focused on the Rebbe. It's a Russian approach to Hasidus. It's very different. The old Skolia Rebbe was also he was a big tzaddik and but there's different approaches. The Samarov was very uncomfortable, even though there are two different tzaddikim with different approaches. The Samarov was very uncomfortable. He went to visit the Skolia Rebbe, and he felt uncomfortable there because it's a very different approach. But the Skolia Rebbe, he captured a certain aspect of people's psychology and spirituality, and the Samarov captured a different aspect, really. Essentially. Right. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, and I don't mean to insult the Lubavitcher Rebbe either. That's my point. Is that the critique is not an insult. Anyway, so this book from that they had a forward from Rabbi Leff, and essentially it's that starry-eyed American Tamimistic approach to the Haredi world. It's very much what you see Ola Chadash from Malataf, and the type of once you get across the street to Arzia Bira, it's a little bit different, but and then but the interesting, I think, is Rabbi J.J. Schechter from YU, certainly much more modern approach, and he, although the fact of the matter is, Rav Zev Leff is a modern Orthodox rabbi. He was a young Israel rabbi. He's not really a Haredi rabbi just because he wears a frock and a Hamburg. And he went in the Tzahal, and he is essentially a religious Zionist. Just I don't think he says Hal on Heir. He makes a yontiv out of Heir. He has a Sudas. So it's not a Sudas mitzvah, it's a Sudas hador. So it's a little different. Whatever it is. So so Reb J.J. Schechter is intellectually honest. It was in the Tradition magazine. I think it was Rabbi Schechter there. He said that that when the Ohr Somayach said that the fear of the oath is past, he didn't mean, the way kind of Rav Leff was reading it is like, part of the oaths is that the Gentiles also are under the oaths, and once the Gentiles give us permission, we're not rebelling. It says you shouldn't rebel against the Gentiles. So if the Gentiles give us permission, so we're not rebelling, so now the oaths don't apply anymore. That's kind of how Rav Leff seems to be reading it. And Rabbi Schechter is being intellectually honest when he says, no. What we really mean is that the oaths are that we shouldn't make our own independent state. So if it was still under British control, as it was under the Balfour Declaration, so that it's not a violation of the oaths, meaning the fear was that they would establish an independent state like they have now, which violates the oaths. I'm saying the Shitas Ohr Somayach. Obviously, you go to other Rabbanim, they have different Shitas, different ideas. But to be intellectually honest, it's very clear. Look in the Meshech Chochmah, the Ohr Somayach held, and in the Ohr Somayach also, the Ohr Somayach very obviously held that the oaths were binding, halachically. The Avnei Nezer also, even though he said it's a gadata not halacha, he also held they were binding. The Avnei Nezer was also anti-Zionist. So we have to be intellectually honest, because so often people are like, they're very cavalier. I heard Moshe Weinberger say, the Avnei Nezer, he held that it was just a gadata, and obviously Satmarav held it's halacha. But the nafkamina of a gadata versus halacha, Lefi Shitas Avnei Nezer. I'm not talking about other Shitas and Rishonim, Achronim things. But what I'm saying is that there are certain things that are very even the Ramban, when he talks about the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, Sivu Samarov writes about that. It makes a lot of sense the way he learns it. So if you want to start a new religion and call it religious Zionism, it's fine, but just be intellectually honest. Don't try to twist things. I've said before, part of the reason why the Zionists and the Muslims are at odds with each other is because they both are in the same business. The Muslims claim the Jewish prophets were Muslims, and the Zionists claim that the Jewish tzaddikim were Zionists, and neither one is 100% true, and neither one is really 100% false. Meaning, if you're saying Muslim means someone who submits to God, so yes, the not as far as what religion they belong to, but as far as, using a term. So yes, they were Muslim, that they were dedicated to God. They were submissive to God. That doesn't mean that they were followers of Muhammad and believed in the Quran, or the Hadith, or the Sunnah, And I've heard honest, Islamic scholars and clerics, be honest about that. That when they say that, the Jewish prophets were Muslim, doesn't mean their religion. It means obviously their religion was Judaism, but their, the word Muslim just means that they were, that they followed God. So it's the same thing. You want to say there's the Tzionim, they're from Tzion, all right, but it doesn't mean that they would approve of the Herzl Zionism or even of Rav Kook Zionism, or Meir Kahana Zionism. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's different things we could discuss about these things, and we can discuss them in an honest way. Meir Kahana, he would, claim that, someone, if they don't accept his shita, that they're totally ignorant of Judaism. The one there with what by the dumpster? Yeah. Oh, thank you. God bless you. Have a good day. So that's the, but there are nuances that have to be addressed and recognized, and a lot of folks are not familiar with the nuances of what's really things are about, and that's why I applaud J.J. Schechter for being intellectually honest. This is good, how I'm parked? Yep. Because it's really necessary to understand these things. And so I applaud him for his intellectual honesty. Even though it's obvious he personally disagrees, but he personally disagrees, but he knows, he's not trying to rewrite history. He's not trying to be a revisionist. That's basically the point I want to bring out. So, all right, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. And so that's what I want to say about the Balfour Declaration. That when the Ohr Somayach said that the Balfour Declaration, that the fear of the oath is past, it doesn't mean that it's matir the oath, that it's matir the shvuos. It doesn't mean that now the shvuos don't apply anymore. Meaning that it would seem he's not saying, if we want to be intellectually honest, he's not saying that, now we don't have to worry about the oaths anymore, but rather what he's saying is that since the Balfour Declaration is not a declaration of a state, but rather it was still part of the British Empire, that for the time being, the fear that the oaths would be violated has passed. All right. I think I'll feel better if I... All right. God bless. We'll talk later.